Reflective and mindful teaching and educating young learners is important because it allows teachers to understand and respond to the individual needs and learning styles of students. Hello everyone, my name is Bianca Reyes and welcome to QC Teachers Tayo para sa paghilom, pagbangon at pag-asa. Fostering a supportive and engaging learning environment is a challenge for many teachers, especially because the educational landscape has somehow changed as a result of what educators experienced over the pandemic. For this reason, the Miriam College Center for Peace Education and Department of Psychology bring you this webinar entitled Reflective and Mindful Teaching. Allow me to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Trixie Marie Season is an educator who has been in the field for more than 30 years. For the most part of her career, she has been involved in early childhood education as principal of the Miriam College Child Study Center. Later on, as Dean of the College of Education and eventually Academic Dean of the School of Arts, Sciences, and Education. Dr. Trixie became an invaluable human resource in the tertiary and postgraduate levels, not to mention a member of CHED's technical committees on early childhood education and the technical working group responsible for drafting the implementing rules and regulations of transnational education. Because of her outstanding academic track record, among which is a postgraduate certificate in academic practice at the University of Liverpool and a fellow of UK's Higher Education Academy, Dr. Trixie is currently the Vice President for Academic Affairs at Miriam College. Throughout the years, she was not only into teaching and supervision, but she has broadened her horizons into writing and reviewing books, developing curricula, instructional materials and modules, as well as being a resource speaker for a wide array of topics related to her fields of specialization. Friends, let us all welcome Dr. Trixie Marie J. Season. Hi, Dr. Trixie.
Hello, Bianca. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hello, friends.
Hello. Yes. So we are very much excited for your talk. Could you let us know about your objectives?
Okay, so for this talk, we have two objectives. One, we're going to discuss how to cultivate effective learning environments. And the second objective is to improve the teaching learning process through reflective and mindful teaching practices.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trixie. The virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you, Bianca. So I will now share my slide with you, and hopefully you'll be able to learn something with my presentation. So the title of my presentation is Reflective and Mindful Teaching. It's really a way of cultivating effective learning environments. So as I've mentioned earlier, we have two objectives for this particular webinar. One is to discuss how to cultivate effective learning environments, because this is really important, especially so that the educational landscape has definitely changed. And number two, to improve the teaching learning process through reflective and mindful teaching practices. So, as a teacher, I'd like you to reflect on these questions. How do you know if your students really understood your lesson? You know, we devote so much time in preparing for a lesson, but when you actually implement it, how do you know if your students really understood your lesson? And can their understanding be just reflected through the result of their assessment? Most of you will say, after I give them a test, I would know if they understood the lesson or not. Now, what if the students already possess the knowledge and skills and competencies prior to attending your class? Have they truly learned something, or are they just trying to demonstrate what you expect from your students? In the late 1980s, Lee Shulman introduced the term the scholarship of teaching. Just like in research, for teaching to be considered as a scholarship, it should possess the following characteristics. One, it should be public. Number two, it should be susceptible to critical review and evaluation. And number three, it should be accessible for exchange and used by other members of the academic community. Now, how does a teacher conduct the scholarship of teaching? And the answer to that is through reflective teaching. Now, what is reflective teaching? Reflective teaching really is a process in which teachers would have to think critically about their own teaching practices to improve their effectiveness. It involves a lot of things like examining your own beliefs in the classroom, about your students, the values that you have, the assumptions that you have, as well as the specific strategies and methods used in the classroom. Now, reflective teachers also consider student feedback and the data on student learning to inform their practice. And it's not just a matter of self-evaluation or introspection. It is really a deliberate and systematic process that involves the following steps. One, you have to collect data. You have to gather data from your experiences in the classroom. Now, this data can come from a variety of sources, such as the feedback coming from your students, classroom observations, and assessment results. And then you have to go through another step, which is analysis. Now, once the data has been collected, reflective teachers analyze it to identify patterns and trends. Now, this helps them to understand what is working well and those aspects in your lessons that are not working effectively. Third, you need to plan. Now, based on the analysis, reflective teachers develop plans to improve their teaching. This may involve trying new strategies, adjusting existing methods, or making changes to the curriculum. Next, you have to act. Reflective teachers implement their plans and monitor their results. Now, this allows them to see if the changes they have made are having a positive impact on student learning. And lastly, it was Dewey who said that, experiences are important, but it is also important to reflect on the experience. So reflective teachers regularly revisit the process, reflecting on their experiences and making further adjustments to their teaching as needed. And it would be good to look into the cycle of reflective practice. First, you have to describe what happened, okay? So if you want to look back and reflect on the lesson, describe what happened when you were actually implementing the lesson. And then process your feelings, okay? What are your reactions and feelings? Were you frustrated? Were you happy with the result of your lesson? And then evaluate what went well and what could be improved. And then go to your analysis. Now, you have to make sense of the situation. Then you conclude, what have you learned? And next, do a plan of action. What are you going to do differently in order to improve your lesson? So it's really a cycle of the cycle that you need to follow in order for you to be able to improve your own teaching. Now, what are the advantages of reflective teaching? One would be on professional growth. Okay, so reflective teaching encourages teachers to continuously improve their teaching practices by examining their own experiences, successes, and challenges. Now, this ongoing self-assessment and growth are essential for maintaining the highest standards in education. Number two would be increased student learning. By regularly reflecting on their teaching, teachers can identify what works well and what needs improvement in the classroom. This process can lead to more effective teaching strategies, resulting in increased student engagement and improved learning outcomes. Next would be enhanced problem solving. Reflective teaching helps teachers identify problems and challenges in their teaching. It encourages them to explore various solutions and make data-informed decisions to address these issues, leading to better problem-solving skills. Next would be tailored instruction. By reflecting on their teaching methods and understanding the diverse needs of their students, teachers can adapt their instructional approaches to meet the specific learning needs of their students. This personalization of instruction can lead to more effective and equitable learning experiences. Next would be increased self-awareness. Reflective teaching promotes self-awareness, helping teachers become more attuned to their own biases, assumptions, and teaching styles. This awareness can lead to a more inclusive and culturally responsive classroom environment. Next would be improved communication. Reflective teaching encourages teachers to communicate more effectively with their students, colleagues, and parents. It promotes open dialogue about teaching strategies and student progress, fostering a collaborative learning environment. Next would be professional development. The practice of reflective teaching often involves sharing experiences and insights with colleagues, which can lead to collective professional development. Educators can learn from one another and adapt best practices in a collaborative manner. And lastly, research and scholarship. Schulman's work also highlights the connection between reflective teaching and educational research. Engaging in reflective practice can inspire educators to conduct research, share findings, and continue to contribute to the scholarship of teaching and learning. Okay, so there are 6 principles of reflective practice according to Farrell. Reflective practice is holistic because it should consider all aspects of teaching and learning, including the teacher themselves, the students, the curriculum, the classroom environment, and broader social and educational context. Reflective practice is evidence-based. It should be based on concrete evidence, such as student feedback, lesson plans, and classroom observations. This evidence can help teachers to identify areas for improvement and to track their progress over time. And reflective practice involves dialogue. Reflective practice is most effective when it is done in dialogue with others. This could involve talking to colleagues, mentors, or students. Talking through their experiences can help teachers to gain new perspectives and to develop new insights. Reflective practice bridges principles and practices. It should help teachers to connect their theoretical knowledge about teaching with their actual classroom experience. This involves thinking about how their teaching aligns with their beliefs and values and identifying areas where they can make adjustments. Reflective practice requires a disposition to inquiry. It requires teachers to be open-minded and to be willing to question their own assumptions and practices. They should be willing to try new things and to learn from their mistakes. And lastly, reflective practice is a way of life. So this means that it has to be part of what we do as a teacher. So there are so many practical applications of reflective practice in the classroom. So, okay. All right. So there are so many. Okay. All right. So one way of doing it is to look into the strategies on how to engage in reflective teaching. One is to keep a journal. Teaching journal is a great way to reflect on your teaching practice over time. You could use your journal to record your thoughts and feelings about your teaching, as well as student feedback and data on student learning. You can also use exit slips. Exit slips are a quick and easy way to get feedback from students about the lesson. You can also ask students to write down what they learned, what they liked or disliked about the lesson, and what they would like to learn more about. It's also important to conduct classroom observations. Ask a trusted colleague or mentor to observe your teaching and provide feedback. This can be a valuable way to get outside perspective on your teaching. Analyze student work. Take some time to analyze student work such as essays, tests, and projects. This can help you identify areas where students are struggling and areas where they are excelling. Talk to colleagues. Talk to other teachers about their teaching practices and experiences. This can be a great way to learn new ideas and strategies and to share your own insights. Attend professional development workshops. There are many professional development workshops available on reflective teaching. These workshops can provide you with the knowledge and skills you need to engage in reflective teaching effectively. Now, here are some tips for reflective teaching. One, you have to be honest with yourself. Reflective teaching, it requires you to be honest with yourself about your strengths as well as your weaknesses as a teacher. Also, be very specific. When reflecting on your teaching, focus on specific aspects of your practice, such as a particular lesson, teaching strategy, or classroom management technique. Be open to change. Reflective teaching should lead to change in your teaching practice. Be open to trying new strategies and making adjustments to your teaching based on your reflections. Reflective teaching is an essential skill for all teachers. It can help you to improve your teaching practice and make a positive impact on your students. Now we go to mindful teaching. Mindful teaching really is an approach to education that incorporates principles of mindfulness, which is the practice of being fully present and attentive in the moment into the teaching and learning process. It emphasizes a development of self-awareness and emotional regulation and a deep connection between teachers and students. So what are the key principles of mindful teaching? One would be presence. It begins with the teacher being fully present in the classroom. This means giving their complete attention to the students, the subject matter, and the teaching process. Mindful teachers are not distracted by their own thoughts or external concerns. I know that as a teacher, you're more inclined to think of the process, like what are you going to do next? But it's important that presence, being present to their students, to what you're doing is really very important. Number two is non-judgmental awareness. You have to cultivate an open and non-judgmental attitude towards themselves and their students. They recognize that everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and they approach teaching with acceptance and compassion. Active listening. Mindful teaching involves active and empathetic listening to students. Teachers strive to understand their students' perspectives, concerns, and needs, which helps build a strong teacher student relationship. And then emotional regulation. Mindful teachers are skilled at recognizing and managing their own emotions. They model emotional regulation for their students, teaching them how to handle their own emotions effectively. Empathy and compassion. Mindful teachers cultivate empathy and compassion for their students, understanding that each student is unique and may face various challenges. They create a supportive and inclusive classroom environment. Reflective teaching is also very important because mindful teachers regularly engage in self-reflection to assess their own teaching practices, their interactions with students, and their own growth as educators. They're open to making improvements based on their reflections. Mindful classroom management. It includes strategies for managing the classroom in a way that is respectful and promotes a sense of safety and well-being among students. Discipline is focused on restorative rather than punitive approaches. Mindful pedagogy. Mindful teaching extends to the design of instructional methods and materials. Teachers incorporate mindfulness practices and activities into their curriculum to help students develop their own mindfulness skills. Stress reduction. Mindful teaching can help reduce stress and anxiety in both teachers and students. Techniques like deep breathing, meditation, and mindfulness active exercises can be integrated into the classroom to manage stress and improve concentration. And mindful assessment may focus on holistic evaluation of a student's development, including not only academic achievements, but also emotional and social growth. Formative assessment techniques can be used to support ongoing improvement. So mindful teaching is not only limited to any specific grade level or subject area and can be adapted to various educational settings. It could foster a positive and supportive learning environment, enhances students' well-being, and helps them develop essential life skills in addition to academic knowledge. So, how can mindfulness help us become better teachers? As teachers, we are focused on thinking about what needs to be done rather than focusing on what is important, and this often leads to frustration. So, mindfulness helps teachers understand our own emotions better. Mindfulness helps us communicate more effectively with students. We avoid words that might cause misunderstanding with the students. Okay. Three, mindfulness helps us manage students we find difficult. When we are being mindful, we are able to go beyond our emotions and determine real reasons for the students' misbehavior. Okay. Four, mindfulness helps us set up a positive learning environment. So we can set up the learning environment in such a way that it becomes more conducive for learning. Mindfulness helps strengthen our relationship with students. Students know that they are valued when they know that they are being seen. Mindfulness helps us slow down when we need to. We are aware that teachers also, like students, need time to think. And number seven, mindfulness helps us build community. Mindfulness helps us create a sense of belonging. So these are the exercises that you could use when working with difficult emotions. Think about the student you find challenging, and then recall the last time she or he did something that made teaching difficult. What emotions does the memory elicit? Do you feel annoyed? Do you feel frustrated? How does your body feel? For example, are your shoulders tense? Your stomach tight? Now, don't try to stop the feelings or change them. Just sit with them. Listen to the thoughts that come from these feelings. And this practice is helpful because it will enable you to learn how your emotions function. This will help you to respond consciously rather than unconsciously to behavior. And it may help you to record these reactions in a journal. And another exercise would be having, a wait time. Explain to students, we know that kids learn better and teachers teach better when we give ourselves time to think about a question before answering it. I will wait about 3 seconds after I ask a question before I call on anyone to answer. This will give you time to think about how you'd like to answer. I will also give myself some time before I respond. Another would be each time you do your 3 second wait time, use it to mindfully take a nice deep breath. Now, if you're standing, notice the weight of your feet on the ground. Allow your awareness to broaden so that you can take in the entire class. Scan the class, noticing each student as they raise their hands and choose one you may not have called on much lately. Okay, because there is a tendency for some teachers to just call on a specific student, but it would be good to really make sure that you're able to engage with all your students. And as the student answers, listen mindfully and spend time considering it. All right. So this is just material that I'd like to share with you from Mindful Schools, and it talks about, the domains of mindful teaching. So there is such a thing as embodiment, container, engagement, lesson, and practice. For embodiment, how can I use my presence to help anchor or regulate the space? Okay. For container, okay, how does it feel to be a student in my class? Now, this will give you a chance to empathize with your students. Third, for engagement, how are the students and I relating and connecting to the lesson and to each other? Okay. So it talks more on how you relate with your students and how your students relate with each other. Next would be the lesson. The lesson, how do my instructional choices and activities support my learning outcomes? Okay. And lastly would be practice. How will I facilitate mindfulness practice that meets students where they are? Okay. So in essence, a framework was developed by Megan San Miguel in 2020. There are 4 things that you need to consider when you arrive. How, as a teacher, do I get myself in the right headspace to begin teaching? For scoping, how do I find out who is in my class, what they are expecting to learn, what they already know? For focusing, how do I make sure I pay attention to the information I get from scoping and align it with what I had planned for the day? And lastly, adapting. How do I adapt the materials I had prepared to suit what is needed in the class. Okay. So I'll share with you some tips for becoming a mindful teacher. Number one is to stop and notice.
So here's something you could try if you're having a difficult day at school, maybe just not connecting with the kids, or you notice that you're feeling a little bit out of sorts, maybe irritable or angry, confused, a bit foggy. When we have these feelings normally, we tend to try to avoid them and just to kind of power through regardless. But in mindful awareness training, we're actually turning towards them and noticing especially the physical sensations that accompany difficult feelings. When we do this, we tend to find that acknowledging and accepting our state of mind or feelings can actually loosen the grip of difficult emotions on us. So perhaps the single most important thing you can do is to just try and take a moment, go and sit by a window, go for a short walk, and just tune into how you're feeling. If you can, just name it. Accept that this is how you're feeling. You may not want to feel this way, but actually the feelings are here anyway. What we find is, though this may be counterintuitive, it can have a really beneficial effect on how the rest of our school day might unfold.
So recognize what you're feeling.
So here's something you could try if you're having a difficult day at school, maybe just not connecting with the kids, or you notice that you're feeling a little bit out of sorts, maybe irritable or angry, confused, a bit foggy. When we have these feelings normally, we tend to try to avoid them and just to kind of power through regardless. But in mindful awareness training, we're actually turning towards them and noticing especially the physical sensations that accompany difficult feelings. When we do this, we tend to find that acknowledging and accepting our state of mind or feelings can actually loosen the grip of difficult emotions on us. So perhaps the single most important thing you can do is to just try and take a moment, go and sit by a window, go for a short walk, and just tune into how you're feeling. If you can, just name it. Accept that this is how you're feeling. You may not want to feel this way, but actually the feelings are here anyway. What we find is, though this may be counterintuitive, it can have a really beneficial effect on how the rest of our school day might unfold.
Next would be taking a break.
One thing that can really help us in the middle of a busy day is to occasionally just take a deeper breath. We tend to take our breathing for granted. It's an automatic activity, but in fact, there are many physiological and psychological benefits to allowing the breath to settle and to deepen a little. So in the midst of a busy day, we can occasionally just take the moment to take a few conscious breaths, to actually deepen the breath a little bit, to take a slightly longer in-breath and a slightly longer out-breath. Actually breathing in this way engages the parasympathetic nervous system and can help us to recover and restore the precious energy that we need.
This is the last tip. Make it part of your routine.
So you can also look for opportunities during the day. Perhaps when you're in a queue at lunchtime, or you're on the bus on the way home, or you're driving your car, or you're just waiting for the internet to stop lagging. Instead of seeing these moments as frustrations, things that are getting in the way of your day, perhaps just turn to them and see them as a gift. Take a moment to pause. Just tune into the feet. Notice physical sensations. Notice your breathing. These sensory experiences that can just help anchor us into the present moment.
So those are the three tips. You have to recognize what you're feeling. You have to make sure that you uh, take a deep breath and make sure that you're able to make it part of you, make mindfulness be part of your routine. So I hope that you learned something from this sharing. Thank you so much, and I am now open to your questions. Back to you, Bianca.
Thank you, Dr. Trixie, for sharing with us your insights on how teachers can best design a reflective and mindful learning environment. So, we just have a few questions and would appreciate your brief answers. So, our first question is, in your experience, why is reflective teaching important?
As I've already shared earlier, it's important because it helps improve the teaching learning process. As a teacher, you're able to evaluate what you do in your classroom. At the same time, it gives you the chance or opportunity to improve the lesson, the activities, and also the way you relate with your students.
Okay. So, our second question is, why do teachers need to use mindful teaching in the classroom?
Okay. Teachers need to use mindful teaching practices so that they'll be able to enjoy what they're doing. Um, will also be able to allow the students or give the students an opportunity to enjoy learning as well. Being mindful of what you're feeling, being mindful of what you do, create a sense of belonging because students feel that they are being seen. They feel they're able to realize that someone is listening to them. So it allows students, or it gives both teachers and students the ability to really make to really maximize learning in the classroom.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trixie, for your answer. So, for our last question, could you let us know how can reflective and mindful teaching help students?
It helps students basically because for reflective teaching, the main goal really is to improve learning. So hopefully, when you do reflective teaching, students are able to benefit from the the teaching learning process. And for mindful teaching, it allows students to have a space where they could be themselves. It gives them the opportunity to learn uh, to learn concepts, acquire skills that that are basically um, uh, skills in a non-stressful manner, because sometimes children feel pressured to do things because uh, teachers are not so much mindful of what they're doing. But when the teacher is mindful, they are able to address the needs of the students. So when students' needs are addressed, learning becomes easy.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trixie, for sharing such relevant tips with us. And we thank everyone who submitted their question. Okay, so once again, thank you, Dr. Trixie Season. It is without a doubt that reflective and mindful teaching are crucial for the mental health of both teacher and students. Teachers who continuously improve their teaching practices are able to tune in more closely to the changing needs of their students. So, thank you, teachers, for listening in. A self-assessment will be posted in the coming days for you to reflect on as part of your journey towards peace, positivity, and productivity. A certificate of participation will be emailed to you once we receive your self-assessment. Once again, I am Bianca Reyes from Miriam College. Miriam College commits to a journey with the Quezon City LGU and QC Schools Division in taking care of our teachers. Because after all, QC teachers, tayong lahat.